Hello and welcome back to Rock Records Review. And this week, as he is about to turn 80 on the 18th of June, we take a look at the top 10 Paul McCartney songs. Now, I may be saying something you already know, but it's almost impossible to overstate the colossal importance and influence Paul McCartney has had on popular music. In fact, not just popular music, but late 20th century culture. Just watch any casual music documentary and you'll see everybody from Ozzy Osbourne to David Crosby and thousands of musicians in between talking about how the first time the light went off in their head for musical inspiration was when they saw the Beatles for the first time. Now, I know that not everybody is as passionate about the Beatles as I am, and many of you probably don't even like them. And yes, Paul McCartney has often been accused of being a little bit twee with his music, but to not acknowledge their importance and their influence and their cultural significance is just simply complete musical ignorance. I've talked before about how natural a songwriter I think he is, and of course he's a wonderful multi-instrumentalist as well. But I think his not so secret weapon is his voice. He's a fantastic singer. And he can apply this voice to so many different kinds of music, from hard rock to the most intimate of ballads. And he has or had, I'm fully aware of the current criticisms, a fantastic range and a very, very broad vocal palette emotionally. Now, many people over the years have pored over McCartney's songs, and there's a wealth of easily accessible material telling you the background to these songs, books, podcasts, TVs, radio shows, websites. So I'm not going to prattle on too much about the background to them or too much technical detail. I'm going to just talk to you about these songs and tell you why I love them and what they mean to me. And as such, as a little word of warning for this list, some of it gets a little bit personal. So if you're one of those people who find others waffling on about how much things mean to them, then you may be reaching for the sick bag, and this might not be the list for you. I'm not going for the famously co-written songs with John Lennon. My selection really is from his solo career and from the Beatles songs that we know he pretty much wrote on his own in their entirety. But look, let's crack into it. At number 10, I'm going to put from Revolver the song For No One. For No One is a sort of pop baroque song about a lonely woman. And I had this old cassette of Revolver when I was very young. My dad had one of those flat cassette machines, you may remember. And I found this cassette in my parents' collection. It was Revolver on one side and Abbey Road on the other side. And I would listen to this cassette every night to fall asleep to. And one of the songs that I was just completely enchanted by was For No One. It's such a simple, bittersweet melody through the verse, and then it has this twist on it that we've heard McCartney do before, where the chorus comes in and the music gets just a little bit more darker, possibly even a bit more melancholy, often shifting to a minor key to emphasize the shift in mood. I wonder if that's something he picked up from writing with John Lennon, because famously they used to have that kind of balance between them with their writing on the songs together. Funnily enough, John has gone on record as saying this is one of his favourite McCartney songs, and McCartney himself has often talked about how this is one of his faves as well. And of course it has that wonderful French horn solo in the middle. At number 9, I'm going to put Uncle Albert and Admiral Halsey. This is from Paul and Linda's 1971 album Ram. Now, I've talked about Ram before and what a great record I think it is. But for me, this is absolutely the best track on it. It's another of Paul's ever-changing songs. It's like a suite of music that moves from one passage, one section to another. He's probably the deftest songwriter of them all at doing that. He does it over and over again, and on quite a few of the songs I've chosen on this list. And it is such an unusual song. It keeps moving forward, very cleverly adding to the arrangement each time. So it doesn't really feel like there's much repetition, even though structurally there is a little bit. And it has such playful moments to it as well. You've got the phone ringing, the prr, 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 and then the man on the telephone, the silly rhymes, the butter wouldn't melt till to put it in a pie, right? And it's that really sort of offbeat, surreal British sense of humour I think that you suspect the other Beatles would have really loved and appreciated had he introduced this song to them. There are about 4 sections in this song, and I don't know if I actually understand what any of them are really about. Of course, it's all completely hummable, like most McCartney stuff is, and it stays absolutely, for me, on the right side of annoying, although I'm sure some of you will disagree. I know there are some people who think it's far too much, but for me, this is one of his most playful and endearing songs. And number 8, and some of you may think this is a little bit low, but I'm going to put Hey Jude. Hey Jude was a standalone single from 1968, inspired, of course, by John's son Julian, who is the Jude, the jewels of the title. It's really easy to gloss over this track now because it is so ubiquitous, with the song's long na-na-na coda now being a standard chant at football matches and festivals and just about everywhere in between now. But what a piece of music this is. It's another song in F, which is one of Paul's favourite keys to write in. It suits his voice brilliantly, and it cycles around a fairly sort of simple verse chorus sequence 3 times before it builds up into the na-na-na coda, which lasts for over half the song's actual running time. Well, this was my dad's favourite song, and it's one I seem to have known since from the moment I was born. So, you know, the melody and the words and the sound of it, they're all completely in my DNA. And it's a universal lyric about offering support and friendship and love. And it's just got that irresistible sing-along section at the end that they deliver with such a powerful, uplifting exuberance, especially on Paul's vocal. If you listen to what Paul's doing, he's really pushing it at the climax, and no wonder it was a monster hit. And to this day, it's still one of the most famous and most popular of all Beatles songs. And number 7, I'm going to put Blackbird, Paul McCartney's solo acoustic tour de force from the White Album. It's a Beatles song, I think, that's gained more and more fans, more popularity and momentum over the years, not least because the subject matter has become much more central in society. It's a cryptic lyric about the civil rights movement, and the Beatles were always way, way ahead of the curve on that particular issue. But this is one of the few times where they actually addressed it head on in a song lyrically. It's now an acoustic guitar standard, and it's taught in schools and music classes all over the world. And it's another ascending chord sequence on the verse, and then there's the descending chord sequence on the chorus section, which is another of McCartney's songwriting tropes. It's the 7th most popular song, or a Beatles song, on Spotify, and it's easy to see why, because it's another affecting, deceptively simple song, and in the hands of a lesser performer, it could drag. But here he just plays it with a lightness of touch on the guitar and in his voice as well, and it just all sits very, very easily and comfortably on this lyric, which again, like I say, is deceptively subtle. And number 6. I am going to put Live and Let Die from the soundtrack of the Bond film with the same name. As some of you may know, I'm a huge Bond fan, and the Beatles and Bond are 2 of the ever-present cultural references in my life. Yes, I'm afraid I'm that geeky and I'm that dull. So for me, this was an absolute match made in 00 heaven. Oh, sorry. I was wondering whether I was going to keep that in, and I did. Look, now talk about living up to expectation. This song is just nuts. I mean, it's bonkers in all the best ways. You all know the piano intro that then segues into the sort of heavy guitar section. And then you've got this calypso section, which has a relevance because a lot of the film is set in is it Jamaica? Yeah, it's in Jamaica. And you know, and then they go back to the guitars, and then the fireworks, and then the explosions, and there's mayhem, and just it's fantastic to see live. It's just it's a brilliant live moment at his shows. It's a colossal piece of music written for Live and Let Die, which starred Sir Roger Moore, and it was co-written with Linda actually. And produced by George Martin, who worked on the music for the rest of that film. Famously and pretty abysmally, I have to say, covered by Guns N' Roses. I love his vocal double tracking on here. It's something he did often with his songs, and I think he did it better than anybody else. It gives his voice just a real sort of depth and body to it. If you listen, you can hear occasionally it's just a little bit out of phase as well. But it's still tight enough to sound like one voice, and he did it so well. It's not an easy trick to do that well, believe me. At number 5, I'm going to put Penny Lane. There are a few songs that put a smile on my face as fast as Penny Lane does it. It was recorded famously for Sgt. Pepper, the same session as Strawberry Fields Forever, but they held it back and added it to the Magical Mystery Tour package instead. I think the Beatles in '67 were absolutely at their experimental and arguably their songwriting peak. And Penny Lane is possibly the pinnacle of their autobiographical songs of their Liverpool childhood. As I'm sure you all know, there is literally a Penny Lane in Liverpool. And almost everything you hear in the song actually happened one afternoon. Paul was just observing this and writing it down. And it's really expertly weaved together lyrically. And there's that light touch that perfectly balances the bounce and the swing of the music. My parents used to dance to this. So I have very happy memories of this sort of blasting out at family parties, and it has such an unbridled joy to it. And yet you've got that lovely piccolo trumpet solo in the middle. And, the whole 67 period was about the Beatles reflecting and looking back. Just look at how many of their songs on Sgt. Pepper are about Liverpool or their childhood. And it was an enormously important aspect of their personalities and their music. But I don't think it was ever more simply or better expressed than on Penny Lane. Last summer I took my kids up to Penny Lane because they wanted to see it because of the song. I have to say there's not a great deal to see there now, so you'd be better off doing the Magical Mystery Tour or going to the Beatles Museum than visiting Penny Lane. But if you want to do it, go for it. A couple of the things are still there. At number 4, and again it's another song that kind of relates again to my folks. It's Here, There and Everywhere, Paul's beautiful ballad from Revolver. This is just a sublimely beautiful song, and I think this song is pretty much perfection. You've got the lovely intro with the backing vocals. It gives way to another ascending chord sequence through the verse, and it's just so gentle and so elegant, this song. My mum, as some of you know, is a pro folk singer, and she used to sing this at shows, and she used to sing at parties, and I'd hear her playing it around the house, and it's not an easy song to sing well. Luckily my mum was a far better singer than I am, and she smashed it. But it's another example of the enormous range of colours that Macca has in his vocal range, and it's just a beautiful, seemingly effortless song that I think is still kind of oddly a little bit underrated in the Beatles' back catalogue. So we get to the top 3. And at number 3, I'm going to put Maybe I'm Amazed. This is the key track from McCartney's eponymous debut solo album, which I've talked about before. It's a charming record, but at the centre of it all is this absolutely extraordinary ballad. So many things strike me about this song. For one, it just crams so much music into a short space of time. There are so many ideas in here, and again it keeps moving. You always have this feeling of motion with the best big Paul McCartney songs. It somehow, though, still maintains this incredible cohesiveness, and there's just a human core to it, which is very affecting. And I love the way it opens with the title and then repeats it, but not in a big, contrived, chorusy type of way. It's such a natural, confident way of writing a song. This really is a piece of work by somebody who absolutely knows what they're doing. It's hard to describe to people, I think, who don't write songs. Just how masterful the arrangement here is. And then to top it all off, you have what I think may be McCartney's best vocal of them all. He's such a tremendous singer, and this song just demonstrates all of that. His range, both musically and emotionally, on this song is fantastic, and he brings it all to bear here. Just listen to him hitting the higher register as the song takes off. It's fantastic. And then he does this sort of scatty, jazzy descant coming down, and it's almost like he's improvised that on the spot. Now, whether he wrote that or he improvised it on the spot, it's a vocal moment of genius. And for my money, this is absolutely one of the most joyous love songs out there. So we get to the top two, and number one, number one. No, let's do number two first. Number two, I'm going to put the eponymous title track from Band on the Run. Now, there's a backstory to this, because when I was a kid, I've said before, I used to take my dance set record player with me everywhere because I just wanted to play records all the time, and I wanted to play them for my friends and stuff. And we used to go on holiday down to Hastings, in this very south of England on the coast, where my mother was from, and whenever I got the chance and I could disappear, I'd go up to my room with my dance set record player, and I would listen to all the Beatles and Beatles related albums I had with me, and Band on the Run was the one I think I used to listen to the most. And still to this day, when I hear that guitar intro, I am immediately transported back to being a little boy sitting on the bed on holiday by the sea, completely transfixed by McCartney's genius. Band on the Run again another of the musical suites we've been talking about. It has three movements, and they're just so thrillingly pieced together. There's nothing clunky or contrived about it. You have this wistful intro that segues into the harder, tougher middle section, and then it just joyously explodes into the acoustic, uplifting and escapist kind of chorus part. No pun intended on escapist. And it just works brilliantly. Now, lesser writers would have made three different lesser songs out of these three ideas, I think. But by gelling them all into one, he creates a real masterpiece, I think, of musical movement and mood. And every one of the tones is absolutely spot on. And one of McCartney's great gifts as a songwriter is to make music sound huge and epic without needing too much instrumentation or too many overblown gestures, or even volume for that matter. And that's a sign of brilliant arranging, which is a facet you need to be a brilliant songwriter. So that takes us to my number one Paul McCartney song. And it's a little bit of a cheat, I have to say, because it's officially three songs, but it is the Abbey Road suite on the second side of Abbey Road, from Golden Slumbers through Carry That Weight to the end. Now, we've already explored how adept Macca is at joining different musical movements. And this is no different, but this time he's just decided to split the three movements up into three different song titles. But we can just take it as one song, because it's no less pieced together in the same way that Band on the Run is, or Uncle Albert, Admiral Halsey. Now, of course, I've talked about Abbey Road before and how it's possibly my favourite Beatles album. And, you've got John weighing in on this album with Come Together, and you've got George, producing Here Comes the Sun and Something. Those are three of the greatest songs, in my opinion, that have ever been written. And so you're going to need to deliver something absolutely spectacular to round off an album with something like those on. And for my money, side two of Abbey Road may be my favourite side of music in pop history. When that poignant A minor seventh chord begins, something just seems to happen inside, and I know it happens to many of you as well. The best music, moves us, I think, in an almost indescribably profound way. We listen to something and we feel something, and often we don't know whether to laugh or cry. We just know that we're being moved. It's a magical gift that music has. And I think that Golden Slumbers, Carry That Weight in the end, are the very definition of that feeling. I've seen the song played live and I've stood there welling up and feeling tears come to my eyes. And I know I'm not the only one, because I've looked around and see it happen to other grown men and women as well. And I don't know why. I think it just alludes back to something I've said before, that when you listen to music of acts that you love and you followed passionately, you're not just listening to the song you're hearing, you're listening to the whole backstory of that performer or the performers. The music is somehow summarising the epic journey of the band or the act, and that you've been on that journey with them. And there's no better backstory for me than the Beatles' backstory. It's a story of childhood, friendship, loss, togetherness, fame, fortune, tragedy, spirituality, distance, separation, regret, and so much more as well. And I think I hear all of that in this sort of 5 minutes 30 seconds of music, and I find it overwhelmingly powerful and moving. And I think it's McCartney's unique gift as a member of the Beatles and as a songwriter to be able to do that, to touch us so deeply with his words and his music and his voice. So look, that is my top 10 Paul McCartney songs. God, I left out so many. I'm sure I don't blame you for screaming at the screen saying, where's We Can Work It Out, where's Yesterday, where's Jet, where's Got to Get You Into My Life, and just, you know, scores and scores of others. And I don't blame you. We're all right. None of us are wrong. They're all brilliant songs. And you know, I think after all he is arguably the greatest single songwriter of them all, but you know, that's possibly a question for another list. I am off to see him play at Glastonbury this weekend, and I can't wait. I fear it may be the last time I get to see him, which makes me feel a little bit weird. But should the crowd end up singing Happy Birthday to him, I will be singing louder than anyone. And if he doesn't hear me, then maybe one day he'll end up watching this. And if he does, all I can say is, you know, well, happy birthday, Sir Paul McCartney, and thank you for everything. But that's my list for this week. I'll be back very soon with something else for you. So take care, and let me know what you think in the comments below. Bye bye.